Hey everybody, it's JJ Conway, and I'm going to let you know up front we are testing out a new configuration with the camera, the new computer, and the new mic. So we're testing out something new. So if it doesn't work that great, let me know. But I didn't want to keep waiting because I just found something out the other day, and there's only 2 more days for you to be able to take advantage of it. And so today we're going to talk about what I just learned about voting in Texas primaries. And I'm going to tell you, if you're not from Texas, you might be just as shocked as I am. I recently learned that in Texas, you do not have to be registered with a political party to vote in that party's primary election. Can you hear me? Testing, testing, testing. All right, I'm going to go back to the testing. There we go. Okay. Wow, thank you. Okay. So you don't have to be registered to get a ballot. You just show up, you tell them what you want, and that's it. Now, most of us are registered with the party of our choice, but that is separate from being registered to vote. So you register to vote, okay? And then you also register with a party if you want to. And I've voted how I vote, usually aligned with my interests and values and stuff, but I've usually not registered with a party per se. And so other places I've lived being military, you don't just show up and decide which ballot you want that day. Okay. So in other states, I've always supported candidates that align with my values, yet I've just not been registered with a particular party. And so that means I wasn't able to participate in the primary election right now in February and March, only the final election in November. All right. So let me break down how it works in Texas. Okay. When you register to vote in Texas, you register as a voter, not as a Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Conway Party, or anything else. All right. You register as a voter. And then during primary season, which is going on right now, when you go to vote, you're asked which party's primary ballot you want. So you choose one. And at least here in Erath County, you can either say it out loud or you just point to it on the thing, whichever party you want, and then they give you a ballot for that party. So then you're voting in that party's primary, but you don't have to remain affiliated with that party in the future. Now, there is one gotcha rule. Once you vote in a party's primary in a given year, you cannot vote in another party's primary runoff that same year. But beyond that, your choice is flexible each election cycle. So if I wanted to be one party and vote for the primary, I could do that. I don't have to stick with that party for the main election, at least in Texas. Okay. Now, this is different from other states. And so let me explain why this matters. Okay. Because in other states, some voters must formally register with the party in order to vote in that party's primary. And changing your party affiliation can involve paperwork, deadlines, waiting periods. Like I said earlier, I've never been officially affiliated with any party. Now, I have campaigned for candidates. I've made phone calls. I've traveled other states to assist with presidential and other elections. I've donated money to candidates who I think were going to preserve my freedom of speech, my freedom of religion, freedom to do a whole lot of other things that make the USA the USA. But I've never actually registered with a formal party. So I thought until this week that I couldn't vote in the primary. Well, guess what? Like so many other things that I am learning about my new home, the great state of Texas, Texas doesn't operate that way. So what that means is independent voters can still participate in primaries. It also means that voters aren't locked into a permanent party designation. And it means that your choice of the ballot can be situational. It doesn't have to be institutional. I have lived in places where, like, when you go to vote, I shouldn't say that. Well, I already started saying that. So I'm not sure that this is still true. This may have been true 30 years ago when I first became, 32 years ago when I first became eligible to vote, right? But if you were Republican, you voted all Republican. If you were Democrat, you voted all Democrat. Like that was just what you were supposed to do. And that's not today's world, okay? So I hope for many Texans that flexibility actually feels empowering. Like it gives you room to engage where you believe your vote matters most in any given election cycle, regardless of party lines and party affiliations. Now, what I appreciated about learning this is I talk a lot about civic responsibility, financial responsibility, and personal responsibility, and they all stem from the same place. Understanding how systems actually work and then working the systems to preserve your rights, freedoms, and future generations. This was one of those moments for me. See, I had assumed because of other places I lived. I know you shouldn't assume. Everybody knows what happens when you assume, right? But I had assumed the party affiliation was required just the way it had been in other places I've lived. Now, when I learned that Texas handled it differently, it changed how I think about voter participation. And of course, I immediately went to make this video for you. You don't have to sit out because you don't belong to a particular party. You don't have to permanently identify one way or another just to have a voice in candidate selection. You simply show up and choose. Now, some of you may be asking, what's a primary? Why does this matter? Okay. In my excitement, I may have forgotten to explain this. Okay. What a primary election is primary elections determine which candidates will appear on the general election ballot in November. So, for example, Texans are voting for one Senate seat in November. We've got 3 Republicans, the incumbent John Cornyn. We've got Representative Wesley Hunt and Attorney General Ken Paxton. Okay. We've got 2 Democrats. We've got our U.S. Representative Jasmine Crockett and Tallarico. What is he? State Representative James Tallarico. Okay. So you technically got 5 people going for one slot. Okay. But that's not how the party system works. Each party can only have one candidate on November on the ballot, 1 Republican, 1 Democrat, 1 Conway party, 1 Flowers party, whatever. Every party can only have 1 candidate. So what the primary election does, that's where you pick the candidate. So the Republicans are going to go from 3 to 1, and the Democrats are going to go from 2 to 1 for that one slot in September, that one slot in Senate in the November voting. Okay. There's 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats right now. They got to neck it down to 1 and 1. That's what the primary election does. It's like a little funnel. Hey, all y'all want to go at this? Let's see who the party likes. And then we're going to put that candidate up. Okay. So if you walk in and you tell the candidate you want a Republican ballot, your only choices for that Senate seat are going to be those 3, John Cornyn, Wesley Hunt, and Ken Paxton. If you tell the polling staff that you want a Democratic ballot, your only choices are going to be Jasmine Crockett and James Tallarico. Okay. So when you go in to vote on a primary, make sure the names of the people you want to vote for are actually on that ballot. Okay. Because if they're not on that ballot, you got to go back and get the other ballot. You don't want to vote for the other team. I mean, you could, that's a strategy, but they found out in the last election that really backfired for a lot of people. So don't do that. All right. Okay. At the end of the primaries, so we got 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats going for 1 spot in November. At the end of the primaries, any runoff that might need to happen will happen. And you have to vote with that party in that runoff. Okay. After all the dust settles, there's going to be 1 Republican and 1 Democrat. Those are the 2 who is going to be on the ballot when all Texans go vote in November. So in November, I'm going to see the Republican person and the Democratic person. Now, if we'd have had other people from other parties, then you would see them too, but we didn't have that in the primaries. Can you see why this is so powerful? Okay. In many districts, the primary can effectively decide the outcome because of how voter demographics lean. And it becomes a bit of a chess game strategy wise, because what if you don't think your favorite candidate would be able to beat the likely winner of the other party's primary, right? So you got 3 Republicans for this 1 Senate seat in Texas and 2 Democrats. And what if your favorite person on this party, you want to vote for them, but you don't think they're going to beat the person that the other party is going to vote for, and vice versa. You might have somebody that you really like and really agree with, but you're worried they can't stand against the incumbent, John Cornyn. So you might want to vote for somebody else in the primary to make sure your party wins. And are you going to vote on principle, or are you going to make sure that your vote helps your party have a stronger candidate in November? Now, look, I'm not going to name names, but we can all safely assume that with 53% of the vote last time, the person I'm about to talk about is not John Cornyn, okay? It's one of the other two Democrats or one of the other two Republicans that are going against John Cornyn, all right? I have heard repeated conversations about people who really want to vote for ABC candidate in the primaries, but they're afraid that person won't win in November. So they're actually voting for someone else to win their party's primary. They don't like that person's policies so much, but they want their party to be the winner. Okay? So participating in primaries is not a minor thing. It's often where the most decisive choices are made. And so understanding the rules removes confusion, and confusion is what keeps people from engaging. So I want to give you a quick encouragement. Whether we are talking about money, leadership, civic engagement, one principle holds true. Clarity creates confidence. Get clarity on how things work in your local jurisdiction, and then take action. If you ever assumed you couldn't vote in a primary because you weren't registered with a party, now you know, at least in Texas, you can go vote. And whatever other state you're in, if I recall, I don't have it in front of me, but if I recall when I was researching this, I think there's like only 14 states that don't realize it. They must have just been the ones I used to live in. I don't know. But go find out and exercise your power. In Texas and some of these other states, you choose your ballot when you arrive. Be informed, because when you're informed, you're more powerful. And of course, I know where my power comes from, but the Lord has given me power to infect things here on earth. And as much as I can, I am going to occupy till he come. All right. Real quick. Let me let you know if you are listening to me live. If you're listening to me live in Texas, the primaries are 3 March. That's next week. Okay. Yes, that's next week. Early voting is going on right now until tomorrow, Friday, the 27th. So get out and vote. All right. I'm JJ Conway. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care. Be blessed.